Today let's talk about some seriously OP champions that you can play in League of Legends right now in patch 12.20. Some of these choices are of course familiar faces, and some you may be surprised to see in the video, but either way all of these are excellent choices to play as we come to the end of Season 12. You may notice we have left out some of the more blatantly obvious champions that are still very strong, like Fiddlesticks, Darius and Zac for example. So hopefully you guys enjoy hearing about some slightly different picks rather than those that have been strong for quite a while now. Now let's kick it off in the jungle today and start off with Elise. So Elise actually got some pretty good quality of life changes this week, and for a champion that was already performing really well but slightly under the radar, she's now even better. Elise is definitely one of those junglers that's abused more in higher ranks though. She has a super aggressive early to mid game where she can gank and dive to her heart's content, and she's basically all about snowballing. As Elise, you're not going to be able to do as much as you would be able to do on other scaling junglers, but to be honest, you should be able to destroy the game before you even have to worry about this. Elise has some pretty fantastic ganking tools. Obviously, she's got the cocoon, which if she lands, she can then jump onto you with her repel and burst you down with her spider bite. Aside from that though, that repel in spider form means she's really good at tower diving, so she's fantastic at ganking lanes that are pushed in and ready to dive. If Elise does get fed, she just walks around the map one-shotting people. It's as simple as that. The amount of burst and damage she can deal with a few items is mental. So if you do like that aggressive jungle playstyle of stomping the early game and winning before 30 minutes, then give Elise a go, because right now she's on the top of her game. Another champion who is loving life at the moment is Echo, and he has been for the last few weeks now. Ever since those buffs he got in 12.19, he's just been everywhere, in the jungle and the mid lane, but the jungle is still where he's seeing the best results. Echo has some pretty good ganks, he has pretty consistent jungle clearing, but he's not the best at either of these two things. You could say he's a jack of all trades, master of none in the jungle, but it's not quite true because he is the master of snowballing and carrying by himself. Seriously, the damage that Echo can do if he does get fed is beyond compare. His passive damage is insane, and all he's got to do is EQ and auto attack you once to get it, and your health bar will simply disintegrate. One of the best things about Echo though is how risk-free he is. That ultimate means that he always has the opportunity to just get the hell out of there as soon as he's killed you, which means he can dive into teams and take you down without even having to 1v1 like a lot of assassins have to actually do. Echo's kit has a lot of tools to use. He's got that W shield and stun, which is really underrated. He's got that ultimate, which is not only good for his escape, but also for massive AoE damage if you can pull it off. And then he also has a really good amount of mobility with his E, with his ultimate and his itemization too. If you're lined up in Champ Select against a load of squishies, you're going to be licking your lips on this champion. Dive in, one-shot them and win the game. GG, well played. Talking of one-shotting and winning the game, our third and final jungler is one you may not be familiar with, and that's Evelynn. Now Evelynn hasn't had the best season. She's had stints of being good and stints of being not so good, but recently she has been creeping back up the ladder a little bit. Well, the buffs she got in 12.20 have completely tipped her over the edge, and now she's got one of the highest ban rates in the game in high elo. Evelynn is not your typical jungler, she's not one that everyone can play, she's got a very unique playstyle and you really need to know what you're doing to actually play her. But those higher ranking players really know what they're doing with her, and that's why she's so oppressive at the moment. Now if you didn't know, Graves is back in the jungle too, and this instantly makes Evelynn more viable, because she is someone that can completely bypass his armor passive and just take him down easily. Evelynn's ganks and jungle clear early game are okay. They're not the best, but they're definitely not the worst. But it's when she gets level 6 where she really comes online. That permanent stealth means the whole enemy team needs to spam control wards or they're simply just going to lose because they have no idea where she is and where she's going to kill you from. There are very few junglers in the game that are as scary as a fed Evelynn early game. You just know if she does get a few early kills and gets that soul stealer stacking up, you're going to have a pretty tough time, especially if she's got 1 million mastery points. Don't forget, if you do want to see builds, runes, guides, combos and so much more for every single one of these champions featured, then click the link in the description to head on over to our website and download our desktop app. There is so much free content for you guys there, so if you do enjoy our videos, then make sure you check that out. Next up, we're going to move into the mid lane, and the first champion we just have to talk about is the new and reworked Syndra. Now in our tier list, she's still not quite as high as you might expect. Her win rates and stats are still not that impressive, and her early to mid game now is far less oppressive as it has been in the past when Syndra has been strong. However, late game Syndra is now one of the scariest mid laners to play against in the entire game, and that's why if you know what you're doing, you're efficient enough on farming with her, you can get through the early game, you can get into the late game, you can stack that passive, she's definitely one to consider being OP. If you get behind on Syndra, she's just not going to really do anything. She doesn't really have too much damage without items, without her passive stacked up now, so she's not really going to be a threat. But if she does get a few kills early game, she gets that passive up nice and early and she gets those item power spikes quicker, well, you're probably going to struggle to beat her. She now gets 2 stacks on her Q, she now gets a crazy amount of width on her E stun, and her ultimate now executes people below 15% health when that's upgraded too. To top all of that off though, when she reaches maximum stack, she gets a ridiculous amount more ability power. So it really is a ticking time bomb playing against the new Syndra. Not quite a ticking time bomb, but definitely a mid laner still incredibly strong is going to have to be Zed. Zed is having the time of his life at the moment. He's performing exceptionally well patch after patch, and with various champions getting nerfed and his name not being among the list, he's only going to get better. Everybody knows just what Zed does best. He kills his lane opponent, he dives them with his ultimate, and he snowballs the game into his team's favour. The next thing you know, he's got 4 items and he's one-shotting you before you can even see him. Zed can either dive backlines with his ultimate and get out without trading 1 for 1, or he can just set up camp in a side lane and split push the way to win. If you are good at Zed, you're going to be rewarded so much though. He has a really high skill ceiling, really good skill expression, and it's just so easy to outplay people and overturn any fight even against the odds. If you do play immobile squishies that can't build Zhonya's, I'm sure you're already banning Zed, but if not, you probably should start now. Vex is our third and final OP mid laner to talk about this week. Vex is still winning so many games, and if you pick her in the right matchup, it feels like you're genuinely cheating with how easy that lane phase can be. Vex is one you got to be a little bit careful of when it comes to blind picking, because there are a few matchups that really outrange her and can really ruin her day. But on the flip side, if you pick Vex into those low range matchups like Yasuo and Yone, it's going to be absolutely free elo. One of the great things about Vex is that she's quite easy to lane with. You poke and farm with your Q and your E, you block any incoming trades with your W, shield and fear, and then you can just roam around the map with those ultimate resets and win the game for your team. Vex is a terrifying champion to play against if she does get a bit fed though. She can one-shot you without even landing all of her abilities because she dives in with her ultimate and presses her W, and before you know it, your health is nearly completely gone. The fear that she brings alongside this burst though is really hard to beat too, especially if you don't have cleanse available. And if she's picked alongside a team with lots of CC and hard engage, then she's going to pop off every single time. Let's move down to the bottom lane now, and of course we just have to mention Miss Fortune first. Now we did say at the start of the video we're going to try not to talk about champions that have been broken for a while now. But Miss Fortune is going to have to be the exception, because she's still just so incredibly popular and such a fantastic champion to abuse this patch. Miss Fortune has a really strong lane phase, she has fantastic damage with her Q double up behind minion waves, and she's really easy to farm with too with that love tap passive. Now if you kill people pre-6 or not, you're always going to be able to take them down once you do get that ultimate. This ability has got to be one of the best level 6 power spikes in the game. And if you happen to be playing alongside a crowd controlling support like a Leona or a Nautilus or a Rel, all you're going to do is press your ultimate and laugh as your enemies sit there and accept their fate. Throughout games though, Miss Fortune is not just an ultimate bot now, she actually packs a real punch with her auto attacks and her Q throughout team fights as well. She's got fantastic out of combat movement speed to kite better as well, and she's just a bit of a handful to say the least. If you're main AD carry and you're not playing Miss Fortune, you need to ask yourself why, because it doesn't get much better than her right now. Not unless you're an absolute monster at Draven though. Draven is one of those AD carries that will always have his place in the meta, especially to those high ranking players that really know what they're doing. Draven is still the most banned AD carry in the game across the majority of ranks, and it's pretty obvious as to why. Draven is the ultimate pub stomping snowballing powerhouse from the bottom lane. The extra gold you can get from killing people with your passive after catching those axes is insane, and the most important thing is to always make sure you try and take someone down before you die to make sure you cash in before it's too late. If you are good at catching those axes, you can completely abuse this champion, and once you've got that essence reeve, you basically just don't run out of mana anymore. Catch those axes, spam your W, charge towards your enemies and burst them down with your E and your ultimate. And the next thing you know, you'll be unstoppable, you'll be godlike, and you'll be carrying the game, putting your teammates on your back and going into the next game before you even blink. The third and final AD carry that you should be abusing this patch though is Twitch. This guy has had a blinder of a season, especially since the durability patch, and right now he's back at the top of his game again. By far the best thing about Twitch is his scaling. If you get to the late game, you can absolutely demolish entire teams with your ultimate and your expunge. But that's not the only way to carry games with him. Twitch's lane phase might be a little bit difficult, sometimes you can struggle, sometimes you can pop off. But luckily that stealth mechanic gives you the opportunity to carry games anyway. There's no other AD carry that can gank the rest of the map after a reset like Twitch can. Walk into that mid lane with your stealth active and ambush and assassinate the enemy mid laner and snowball multiple lanes at the same time. Twitch can slap up enemy teams in those early dragon fights with his AoE damage too, and if you do partner him up with appealing support like a Lulu or a Yumi, you're just going to have so much fun. Talking of those supports, let's move on to those next, and guess who's up first? Blitzcrank. Yes, ever since those changes in patch 12.19, he's been completely busted, and even though Riot tried to fix this a little bit in patch 12.20, it just didn't really do much at all. The changes he received previously were aimed at enabling him in other roles like the jungle, but honestly all they've done is made him so much stronger as a support. Blitzcrank's win rate is an absolute joke at the moment, it is insanely high and he's winning so many games. The hook is always the biggest part of Blitzcrank's kit, but the fact is he actually deals a crazy amount of damage with his W auto attacks and his E as well. Blitzcrank's ability to carry games stems from his fantastic ability to roam as well. You can walk around the map, line up those hooks, get people fed and just win the game so comfortably. Now as Blitzcrank you can often stomp the lane phase, but even if you are a bit behind, all you gotta do is land that big hook in the late game teamfights on rotating enemies to win the game anyway. If you do happen to lose lane and the enemy AD carry is a bit too fed, all you gotta do is flash hook in the crucial moment to win the game. Blitzcrank can carry games from as early as level 1. You walk into the enemy jungle, you hook someone, you kill them, or even just burn their flash. If their flash is gone, your jungler can gank them, or you can hook them and snowball the game as easily and as early from that point onwards. Genuinely, there's no other better support in the game, especially when it comes to carrying by themselves than Blitzcrank right now. So if you're looking for one to pick and abuse to get yourself out of elo hell at the end of this season, go for Blitzcrank. Another slightly more consistent snowballing crowd controlling support though is Maokai. This champion is getting picked in a variety of different roles right now, like the top and the jungle, but his support is definitely still his most successful role. Maokai's support offers the most consistent and reliable kill threat in the lane phase with his crowd control. There's not much you're going to be able to do against this guy when you don't have flash, because he's going to press W onto you which you can't dodge, and then he's going to knock you back into his teammate with his Q. He can also poke you down in those brushes with those saplings. He can line up good ultimates as well against whole teams with that CC. And you can honestly just understand from that brief 30-second statement just how good this champion is right now. AoE crowd control, a good amount of tankiness to absorb lots of damage, reliable CC, good poke, good vision control. There's just so much to like. But to top it all off though, Maokai is also really easy to play. It's far more about decision making and timings and tracking summoner spells than it is about mechanics. And as long as you're good at punishing mistakes and snowballing lanes, then you're going to have a great time playing this champion. A bit of a weird and wonderful support to talk about next, but it's going to be Heimerdinger. This champion is winning so many games in so many different lanes, but it's definitely the support where he's having the most success. Heimerdinger has such an infuriating and unique playstyle to play against. He's all about constant poke and push potential with those towers. He also has great harass with his W, and he can set up ganks and fights and stuns with that E too. Heimerdinger actually has a surprisingly versatile kit though because of that ultimate. He can make his tower super strong, he can make his W hurt more, or he can make his E stun range extend to hit multiple targets easier. Heimerdinger is one of the most terrifying supports in the game to gank as well, especially if you are playing someone with low range. He's so good at 2v3ing the bot lane and the jungler, especially once he's got that ultimate and got himself a stopwatch. You're going to be really struggling to take him down. And even if Heimerdinger does get a bit behind, he's still always going to be useful just because of how oppressive his kit is and how good he is at pushing and sieging and taking down towers. If you do enjoy a bit of a different playstyle and want to give something different a go, then definitely try Heimerdinger. He's performing so well at the moment and he's not slowing down. Let's finish off by talking about the top lane, and we're actually going to start off with Sejuani. Now Sejuani can be played in both the top and the jungle, but it's actually her top lane where she's seeing the best results at the moment. Yes, you don't even need to take flash on this champion, TP ignite, get some kills, set up some ganks and win the game by snowballing through that top side. Whether you are playing strong side and setting up ganks and getting fed, or playing weak side and just being a crowd controlling machine in teamfights, either way you're always going to be impactful on this champion from the top lane. Sejuani has a surprising amount of kill threat in the lane phase. She's much better than most people think in early duels, but it really is when it comes to setting up ganks where she really excels in. Sejuani has so much crowd control, she has good mobility with her Q, and she's actually really hard to gank in the lane phase too. Unless she's overextending and playing really aggressively, she's just going to Q out to safety every time you try and take her out. As the game goes on and gets towards teamfight, Sejuani only gets better and better. Her main job is to lock down as many enemies as possible with her relentless crowd control, or just to pick off one particular enemy who's doing the most amount of work. Sejuani's ultimate is a real game changer and it's a lot of fun to play with too. And if the enemy team does have a fed AD carry with no cleanse available, well, you're probably going to carry by just locking them down with your ultimate. Another top laner we haven't seen so much of recently but is starting to really dominate again is Camille. And guess what? She's another champion that's absolutely fantastic at taking down fed AD carries. Yes, the meta is heavily focused around bot lane at the moment, especially in competitive play, which means champions that are good at taking down AD carries are infinitely better. Camille is historically one of the most consistent and most popular top laners in the entire game and has been ever since her release. She's got fantastic mobility tools to engage or escape fights, she has incredible training power with her Q, she has good sustain and slows with her W, and then her ultimate just makes her incredible at setting up ganks, isolating targets and taking enemies down in those 1v1s. Camille is one of those champions with a good lane phase, a good mid game and a very good late game too. She doesn't really fall off unless you're against a real anti-Camille team comp, and you're almost always going to be useful even if you do get put behind a little bit. Whether it's team fighting, flanking backlines and isolating AD carries, or split pushing and dueling the enemy top laner and taking down their inhibs, Camille is a fantastic choice to play in that top lane, and you should definitely consider picking her up if you haven't tried her yet. Finally, our last champion on this list just has to be Akshan, and this guy is good in both the solo lanes at the moment, but definitely seeing some better results in the top lane. Now, any champion that can revive their whole team is going to be OP, and that's already one of the reasons why he's been so viable since his release. But actually there's so many other strengths that come alongside this champion. I mean, let's be honest, he's got invisibility, he's got mobility, he's got resets, he's got poke, he's got burst, he's got shields. Yeah, that's a lot of stuff inside one champion's kit. But the thing that really tops all of that off is just his sheer snowball potential. Akshan, if he does get fed, can swing his way into backlines, delete enemy carries, swing his way back out, and then come back in again when the time is right. If you are playing Akshan and you do get fed, you must be loving your life, because the amount of stuff you can do by stealthing around the map, picking off targets, and sniping people down with your ultimate is just so much fun to use. Akshan hasn't been buffed, nerfed, or changed in such a long time, and he's always been good. He has periods where he's not quite as popular, but he has periods where he's really overpowered. And right now he seems to be at one of his strong points. So if you are looking for a new carry to play in those solo lanes, then don't forget about Akshan.
But look at it. It's magnificent!
Well, that concludes our video all about some pretty OP champions that you can use and abuse in patch 12.20 to chase those ranks for the end of season 12. Not very long to go now, so every game counts, and picking up a champion that's thriving at the moment is a fantastic course of action. Don't forget that you can also use our Mobalytics desktop app to help you climb rank too. Here you can find video guides for every single champion, combo breakdowns, builds, runes, and so much more. So don't miss out. Thanks again for watching this video everyone, and we're going to see you in the next one. As always, take care.